Yes, let's reconvene. So where am I up to?
So,
I'm back here, aren't I? Back in submissions.
well, what we're going to do is you say
We are now reopening our
adjourn
adjourned
meeting.
meeting.
And we'll
Okay, we'll get back. Are the others on their way? Councillor Hart, did you notice? Other people on their way? Let's get back to the submissions. I need a bell or something, a whistle, maybe a whistle would be good. Got 3. 4. We've got a quorum. We're just waiting on Councillor Arnott. Here we go. Okay, councillors. We are now reopening our adjourned meeting, a submissions meeting, and we'll move on to the next item, which was item 8.4, and that's the use and development of a special class broiler farm use and development of 4 dwellings and associated works at 320 Malerick Road, Birregurra. 6 people have requested to speak to their submissions. And again, I just want to remind people there's a 5-minute limit on presenting your submissions. So firstly, I've got Mr. James Wentworth.
Sorry. Does that come off my 5 minutes?
Yes.
Madam Mayor and councillors, thank you very much. So I'm here representing Pro10. Pro10 own and operate broiler farms around Australia. You may not have heard of us, but if you eat chicken, there's a good chance you'll have eaten a chook that grew up in one of our sheds. We don't just, we build, own and operate them. We don't just develop and then sell. So when we build a farm, we're there for the long haul. And so relationships with the community are very, very important to us. We partner with them for the long term. Small communities that you may or may not have heard of around the country, like Maryborough, Lethbridge in Victoria, Manila, Gilgowie, Rankin Springs in New South Wales, Port Wakefield in South Australia, Magumba in WA, and another 10 communities around the country. We provide work for the locals. We have families on site, they go to school, we sponsor the local sporting clubs, we sponsor cultural events. So the relationship with the community is very important to us. We're 100% Australian owned. We're owned by Aware Super, which is an industry fund. It's the old public service super funds for New South Wales and Victoria. In terms of the project itself, this is a 24-shed broiler farm on Malerick Road. It'll bring a number of direct benefits to the community. There'll be about 40 to 50 jobs during construction. We'll use local labour and local trades where possible. During operations, there'll be 12 jobs full-time on the farm, and there'll be 3 families housed on site. We get involved in the local community. This will be both Santrev, who's building the farm for us, and Pro10. That's, we shop local, we buy local, and we sponsor local community organisations. We spend about $1.5 million per year in the local community on trades and suppliers. And then there's also additional job opportunities around the farm in placement of the chicks, clean out, wash, trades, and general maintenance. There have been a few concerns raised about the development, and so I'll try and, we think we've addressed them in the material that's been provided to Council, but just to hit on them, there's been concerns raised about biodiversity. So our reports have confirmed there's no impact on growling frog habitat or brolga nesting areas, and there's a negligible impact on legless lizards, and mitigation measures are in place. We're not impacting native vegetation, and any rodenticides we use, so any rat poisons we put out will be bird safe. In terms of Indigenous heritage, there's no impact on any sites of cultural significance, and we'll be doing a cultural heritage management plan for the pipeline to the sheds. In terms of traffic, we're prepared to make a contribution to the upgrade of Maleric Road. There'll be a 40-kilometre speed limit along the road. The traffic moving past at 40 k's, you're very close to the Princes Highway there, so it will not be as noisy as the Princes Highway traffic. And we're obviously happy to consider options to ameliorate the impact of noise on neighbours. There have been concerns raised about where the water's coming from. We'll use about 90 megs a year, and that'll be supplied by runoff from our shed area, so there's about 20 hectares, and then also get the balance of the water from Barwon water. One of the concerns was avian influenza, which has been in the news a bit. Avian influenza is brought in by migratory birds, so our chicken farms do not increase the risk of AI in an area. Odour's been raised, so modern farms have very little odour, and I know a number of councillors have been out to see our Lethbridge farm, and I hope kind of got an idea of odour associated with the farms. Very little. And we've had 2 OERAs done, which is as per the EPA requirements. And finally, dust. There's no dust in the operations, and our environmental management plan provides for monitoring of the dust levels and requires suppression if they exceed certain levels. So thank you for considering our application. We're looking forward to partnering with the community on this project. Thank you.
Thanks, James. Any questions for James? Councillor Potter.
Thanks, Mayor. James, thanks for your presentation. You mentioned about using local trades and builders and suppliers. I note in your application that you have to build some houses, or you propose, if you get your permit, to build some houses on there. But the housing design we've seen is from GJ Gardner Homes that aren't based in Colac Otway Shire. We have some quality home builders available, and I'm just wondering that whether you would give that some consideration rather than using a business that has to come from outside the Shire and bring tradies with them.
Yeah, absolutely, Councillor Potter. We would absolutely do that. Yeah. So.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mayor White. James, thank you for your presentation. A couple of things you mentioned. One, the contribution to upgrade of Maleric Road, but in amongst that, you talked about a 40k speed limit. You're saying that's to be self-imposed on your own vehicles as they traverse the road.
My understanding is there is already a speed limit along that road of 40 k's
in the section you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not familiar with it, but thank you for that. And the other part about that is that you're going to have, obviously, vehicle movements, trucks with feed and or taking litter away and such, or delivering chickens. What sort of, I guess, reassurance around the noise level they make, i.e. the maintenance of the vehicles and their exhausts and such?
Oh, well, look, they've got to comply with all of the traffic restrictions, so they'll be travelling at 40 kilometres an hour. The vehicles have to be maintained. We'll be very responsive to complaints about noise, so obviously we'll certainly be all over it if there are trucks making noise, over and above what, because of poor maintenance. We'll certainly be across that. And our processor is very sensitive to that as well. So certainly we'll be monitoring and enforcing that if we get any complaints.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Potter.
Thanks. Thank you. And you did touch on this in your presentation. Just in relation to the noise, there is potentially one resident that could be affected by the noise. I understand there's been discussions about how you can help mitigate that. Could you just outline for us what those steps are, or where that situation is sitting at the moment?
So we've been in long-term discussions, councillor, with the Beach family, and we've put a few proposals, and the discussions are ongoing, but as of yet we haven't been able to reach an agreement, but we're still talking and hope that we can. I just say the discussions have been going on for a long time, so at some point we've just got to move on. I'm aware that on another application, on the quarry application, there were some measures put in place to put in measures to suppress the noise and reduce the impact of noise, and we're certainly open to a similar kind of undertaking if we can't reach agreement.
One last follow-up question, Councillor Potter.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for that answer, and I appreciate that, as you say, discussions have been happening for some time, and sooner or later got to draw a line in the sand, I guess. Just one of the concerns raised by some CUNY members is in relation to the potential for pollution in the event of a significant rain event or whatever, some overflow through drains and then into creeks and into the Barwon River, and I understand you're taking measures to try and counter that. Could you just summarise what your thoughts are about the likelihood or potential for that, and what steps you've taken to try and mitigate that?
Sure. So I guess the first step is, at least initially, the farm's going to be operated as a barn farm, so the birds don't go outside, and so there's little to no escape. The litter is then carried off site, so there's no pollution on site. There's a 35 meg retention pond being built as part of the proposal, which is enough to cover a kind of 1 in 10, I think it's 1 in 10 years event, so all rain will be captured. And obviously we'll be using that water on site, so we'll be running down that retention pond as quickly as we can. I think in the event that, so I guess the issue is if it does eventually operate as free range, you'll have the birds out in the area, and then you have a 1 in 10 year event, large flooding event. There's very little, there's a bit of chicken manure out in the range area, very little of it. The amount of water that'll be going through, it'll be so diluted, it'll be some free fertiliser for the neighbouring area, and be very, very, very diluted.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, James.
Thanks.
Invite Rodney Beach to the microphone.
Thank you. My submission is objection about the chicken farm. The site is not a good site for the chicken farm, because the actual Corangamite catchment has got shocking mapping of the area. Now, the amount of water that flows down through the area is about 600 acres or 240 hectares comes down through that area. So in a 1 in 100 flood event, I think should be just one big dam. I don't think 34 meg will be quite adequate. Now, also, of the site, just 200 metres to the north, there is a natural wetland that's never been drained, and it's a natural where brolgas nest, and it's a registered nest site. Now, on this traffic management, now I'll go back to the Malerick Road. Now, Malerick Road is supposed to be just staying as it is. Now, I see here trucks, there's, on the figures that they've given me, which I'm not quite sure is quite right, because it just says batches on their figures. Now, 4,000 truck movements is quite a lot of truck movements a year. And if you break that up, it's nearly as much as the quarry. Now, the quarry had to bitumen the road, so why isn't the chicken farm bituming the road? Now, to open the government road that it is unopened as a road to the north of the quarry, well, they did a test and they found 3 legless lizards on it, and quite a few years ago now, the Shire got charged for dumping soil up at Cressy for legless lizard habitat. Now, how are we going to open that road? I'm just not quite sure. Our house at 30 Maleric Road, now, we run into a real issue here. We have trucks, the trucks of the harvest of the chickens go out at night. Now, I've got no idea what time, haven't been told. So the only thing I've been told, they've got to be down in Geelong at 6 o'clock. So do these, so on the figures at here, it says 1,750 heavy truck movements a night. And I don't know how the Shire can even allow this, because Maleric Road is not a main road, it's not a C road, it is just a road up to a few farms with fire access tracks out the top of it, and that's it. So that's highly illegal. Now, Colac's water, they say they're going to take 90 megs. Well, Colac's water, I had a look at the data yesterday, and it's already down to 50% gone. And it was full in January. And Birregurra's getting hooked up to this scheme as we speak, and they're going to take 90 megs out of it as well annually. Well, Colac's going to run out of water very, very quickly with it. Now, back on the house, the speed limit of 40 k's of quarry trucks. Last week, the Shire did work on the road. Now, the Shire trucks are quarry trucks too. So I came into the Shire and I said, how does a
30
policeman
seconds, Rodney.
diagnose a quarry truck to a Shire truck? And the bloke just looked at me and said, I don't know. So to say the quarry does police it very well, in fact, but the quarry has its set scheduled people that come in out of the quarry, and they're the usual ones. So they've got their relations to the quarry, and they trottle up and trottle back. But there'll be several different contractors backwards and forwards out of the chicken side.
Thank you. It's 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any questions? Thank you. Councillor Potter.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Rodney. I'm just seeking a couple extra details about some of the things you said, if you can, just in relation to the discovery of the legless lizards. Can you say who located them and roughly when? And
When a couple of months ago they did a study.
who's they? Do you know?
Biosis
Right,
did
okay.
the study,
Yeah.
and they found 3 lizards on the site.
On the site that we're talking about. Not
Yeah, the road,
further,
the
not
unmade
further down
government
the road or whatever, but close to that location.
Yep.
And just in relation to the Brolga nesting area, how far away is that?
About 200 metres to the north, there's a natural wetland there
Okay,
in Duncan Barbers.
thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. Now I've got Barbara Beach.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very nervous about doing this, but it's a case of have to. Thanks, Lily. Thank you. Neil Longmore has acted as our lawyer through this because I haven't been well, and Neil will be on the internet speaking very soon. And so he has sent all our letters to all the councillors and the Shire officers, etc. But in support of Rod, from what he said regarding the Shire's benefit of this proposal, I find it rather confusing because when we looked at the data of all their traffic movements and trucks and bringing feed in and all that sort of thing, they don't use local contractors, they use the ones that they use at Lethbridge. And for Malerick Road, this will be an enormous cost to the ratepayers of Colac. The Shire signed it off with the wind farm and the quarry, and now it's falling apart. And if the ratepayers have to upgrade it, it doesn't seem right. Now, Pro 10, we've tried to explain to them about the waterways to the north in Duncan Barber's property that Rod touched on, of being a 240 hectare catchment, when Corangamite catchment lists us as 30. And it comes down from the north. And as it comes down, well, Scott Stewart even agreed with me last year, when we did have a wet year, it all flowed between us and our neighbour under the highway and all the people along the Birregurra Road. They had ankle deep in water. Now, if it goes the other way, it goes into Craig Collins's dam, into Scott's, and then it forks out and goes down into Price's Lane, and that's the area of a really wet year where the highway floods, which again goes down into Cons Lane and into the Barwon. So both those waterways end up in the Barwon. So if there's any contamination, it'll all end up in the Barwon. I don't know how on earth they can police 40 k's on our road. The quarry's been very good, but other trucks roar up and down the whole time. And regarding using local labour, James has his own shed building man. As Mr Potter said, they were using another house builder for their residences. And if you're going to be bringing in straw, rice chips, wood chips, pallets, other feed, they will have their own distributors. And the people that clean out their sheds will probably be the same ones that do Lethbridge, and the rubbish trucks. So all these extra movements that haven't been spoken about will be all roaring up and down the road past our house day and night. So it's very concerning to know. Russell's family has lived in our house since 1880, and unfortunately it was built before the road, so we've got to sort of put up with the traffic or move out. But our main worry is the water that will come through this swampy area. We've got all the aerial maps, we've got all the photos of when it's flooded, and we've offered it to Corangamite Catchment and to James, and no one's taken it up with us. Regarding the biodiversity laneways, we call it, that they want to use as their access track east-west. that laneway, when we did the first quarry case, had natural vegetation on it. It was to be registered. This time when they did their study, they found legless lizards. Now, a legless lizard habitat is under the federal government environment, not state. Neil will talk about that because he has looked into that. So I don't know how you'll address that because they'll have to dig it up to make a road to go down to their farm. The other thing is on Darcy's Lane, in their submission, they also say that the infrastructure to get the pipeline from Birregurra up Darcy's Lane into Scott's property is minor infrastructure. It's not, it's major.
We're over the 5 minutes.
And
Thank you, Barbara.
that area has got a lunette on it.
Thank you. Any questions for Barbara? Councillor Potter.
Sorry, Barb. We've heard about Proten trying to address the noise issue for you and your family in your house. Can you outline where that's at and what is the issue from your point of view?
Councillor Potter, really, the main issue is they want us out of our house so that we don't cause anyone any worry, mainly at night. Presently, the offer doesn't seem very reasonable because they only wish to get us out when their construction starts, plus they've been given their permit. But also in doing that, they want a proviso that I stopped we stopped, or the Burnett's or the other people that were objecting, we stopped any objection to Scott's proposal and to them, which we can't do. And it's rather threatening, to tell you the truth, I find it, unfortunately.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Barbara. Any further questions of Barbara? No further questions. Thank you. We now have Neil Longmore joining us on video conference. Neil, welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor.
Thank you.
Yeah, look, I probably won't be able to cover all the things that Barbara mentioned, but I'll try. But I do want to emphasise initially that Council last year unanimously endorsed the environmental sustainable strategy, but specifically clause 2.4.3, which had the aim of reducing potable water use, and it stated that the aim of it was to reduce the reliance and demand on potable water supplies by prioritising the use of alternative water supplies. And frankly, I don't think we're seeing a lot of that here. I guess Council, it's up to you now to assess what did you mean when you endorsed that policy, and I think it was an admirable policy, but the purpose of it is to make sure that our water supplies are secure for all the things that the council prioritises. And as I understand it, and you've got your planning committee following, there's precinct planning going on for thousands of dwellings. I think you're trying to attract industrial uses around the eastern side of Colac. There just isn't a lot of water to go around. I think you probably realise how dry it is at the moment. The Otways they've never been this dry. We're really having quite large issues with Barwon Water to kind of work out what is the sustainable water flows that will remain in the rivers, especially after they've taken so much out of the aquifers over the last 30 years. But anyway, the second point I wanted to talk about was this proposal. It's a remarkable lack of strategic planning for something of such a scale to be, introduced into Colac Otway Shire. If you look at what Golden Plains did, it took them about 2 decades to set up that precinct around Lethbridge and Meredith, where Proten currently are. There was about $12 million of contributions by the federal government and the state government. and the Shire to set up the water supply, the electricity supply, the road access especially, and a special incinerator for dead birds, which is probably coming in very handy at the moment. But all this was to do with making sure that, you know, where you have a precinct like this, the biosecurity measures are done really, really well. And in Golden Plains, they've done that. But I'm not seeing anything like that happening here, that it's just a kind of ad hoc application. It's turned up. I think Scott Stewart probably said, here's my land, you can have it. I think Pro-Tem have just said, oh, okay, we've got this kind of cookie cutter approach. We do it all around Australia. And they do too. All their plans look the same. So, and Barwon Water, I don't know how they can think they can deliver that sort of, that kind of, you know, permanent water without having an effect on the rest of Otway water supplies. But anyway, that leads to the other issue of avian bird flu. I noticed Mr. Wentworth sort of brushed over that, but look, we all know there's 7 poultry farms in that Golden Plains area at the moment that have had all their chickens slaughtered because they've caught a form of avian influenza, and it's not even a really serious form. So if that happens, and the World Health Organization said, look, it's happening, it's spreading all around the world, the much more serious form is spreading to humans. Look, we've just been through a pandemic. I don't think the state or the planners, you know, are keeping up with how we need to do with pandemics, and especially with intensive animal husbandry. We probably, you know, I guess certainly isolating the kind of places like this is very important. This place isn't really isolated. It's only a couple of or maybe 4 kilometres from the highway. Quite possibly, if that has to be shut down in the future, and everybody says it'll be happening, will that affect the highway? I don't know. But nobody's made any effort to address these kind of issues. So, you know, and as Barbara said, there's lots of wild birds in that area. I don't see how, especially with this, you know, interest in having free-range birds, I don't see how you can have a separation in a wetland between wild birds unless you're shooting them all or killing the wild ones and protecting the manufactured ones. I don't see how they're going to be able to prevent bird flu infecting their sheds. So that's just anyway. Probably, I think I've.
Yeah, that's 5 minutes. Thanks,
yeah.
Neil.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions, Councillor Hart.
Yeah, thank you, Neil, for your submission. In relation to the legless lizards that were found, I was wondering if you had any comment on that, because I think Barb Beach in her submission mentioned about the federal implications of that, and how do you see that impacting this proposal?
Yes, so yeah, thank you, Councillor Hart. Yes, I mean, that is a real issue. You probably do remember where council got fined $500,000 for damaging a federally protected species around Cressy. A similar species, the striped legless lizard, has been found on the intended access road for this proposal. That matter must be referred to the federal Environment Department. I've been monitoring the portal that you use to see has such a application been made, but no application has been made yet. So you know, if they are to put a road on that habitat of the striped legless lizard, it will destroy its habitat, and you know, it needs federal approval to do that. And if it goes ahead without it, which maybe you're being asked to do that, I don't know, but that would be a serious problem for the Shire, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Longmore. Any other questions? Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Neil. Just to be clear, this striped legless lizard, is this a protected species, a vulnerable species, or a threatened species under the Environment Protection and Conservation Biodiversity Act?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No other questions. Thanks, Neil.
Thank you.
We now move on to Scott Stewart, if you'd like to come to and address the committee.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors, for giving us the time just to support another positive project within our district. This particular project is going to create enormous agronomic and environmental benefits for us in the farming zone. We've been so reliant upon acid-based soluble fertilisers for the past 60 or 70 years. Now we'll have things available for us in good volumes of chicken manure. You'll have to excuse me if I call it chicken shit, because I do quite often. It's a healthy, environmentally friendly product. Everybody's screaming for it. You can't currently purchase it within our region because the supply has all dried up. The big winner for our region in this vicinity, and I'll say 25 to 30 kilometres, will be the availability and a huge cost saving in freight. Now, any fertiliser we bring into these areas, it's all freight driven. Now, you've got to go, the nearest one's probably 35 k's out to 100 k's. They all talk about $20 a metric tonne, cubic metre for freight. Anybody within 10 or 15 k's, it'll be probably $5. That to a primary producer with one of our biggest overheads being fertiliser, as everything else is just getting so expensive, and our input costs are going through the roof. But at the end of the day, our margins are diminishing very quickly. And on a huge agronomic benefit, but even on the environmental benefit, if we can reduce using these acid-based soluble fertilisers, which Mr. Pivot, we've all been using for the past 30 or 40 years, we will reduce that because, of course, that all inflows into our river system. I can see huge advantages. That's on the rural side. Our own community benefits, Birregurra. There's a fair bit happening in Birregurra, still a little bit stagnant. There's been more businesses closed down in the past 15 years than what have opened. Now here's an opportunity that's going to create employment with a flow-on effect, through the kinder, the school, the community groups. I think James has already demonstrated they're very active and they're very kind to small community towns and community groups where everybody's chasing funding and looking for legs up. These guys are looking to assist where they can. The businesses in Birregurra, construction, more tradespeople in town, buying their meals, bits and pieces in the community, and then ongoing another 12 people. That could mean another 12 families, more children at school, more children in kinder. The levels of numbers at our local primary school have been very stagnant over the last 26, 27 years, which I know because all my children have been there. They struggle for funding. If we can promote some good development, get some more bums in the classrooms, we look for more funding through that. And I just think it's a very, very positive project. And just lastly, in closing, I have a question I put to the Mayor and Council. Will the beach project that is currently happening be put under the same scrutiny as Pro 10 and all the previous applications on Malerick Road? Because all their trucks will go past their house. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Hanson.
Can I just clarify what you're talking about, the beach project?
I read in the paper, a masonry quarry works on Maleric Road. They will have to get a permit and will be they as scrutinised as Pro 10 and every other application on Maleric Road in the last 17 years.
Thank you, Mr Stewart. Any other questions? Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll now invite Jane Collins to present her submission. Thanks, Jane.
Good afternoon. Excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat. My name is Jane Collins, and my husband Darryl and I own Hillview Farm Boarding Cattery at 4570 Princess Highway, Birregurra. We are by far the closest residential property to the proposed development. I asked to address you today because if anyone should be objecting to this proposal, it should be us. But I wanted you to know why we did not object and why we support the applicant. When we first learned about this proposal, we were naturally concerned, as some of you will be well aware. We decided to reach out to Pro 10 to share our concerns. We also undertook our own research to learn more about this type of development. From our first meeting, we have found Pro 10 to be a professional and ethical company. They treated our issues seriously and treated us with absolute courtesy and respect. They addressed each of our issues in detail and arranged for us to visit a similar facility near Geelong. After this fairly lengthy process, we formed an opinion that the development would not impact us, our property, or our business. We did our research, we asked questions, and we made an informed decision. We have been through this, of course, before with the quarry on Maleric Road a few years ago. We note with some interest that the issues now being raised by others are the same ones that were raised with the quarry and the wind farm before that. There is nothing new here. We were told many times how our livelihoods would be destroyed if the quarry proceeded, as we are also the closest residential property to that site too. But here we are, some 4 or 5 years later, and we are completely unaffected by its existence. Funny that. I, of course, also operate a small and thriving business in Birregurra, and as a business owner, I recall the huge boost that the highway duplication and the construction of the wind farm had on our local community and economy a few short years ago. I understand this development will take up to 3 years to build and will have dozens of workers on site. As with the other developments, many businesses in Birregurra are absolutely going to benefit again. When fully operational, it will also create a number of ongoing jobs as well as opportunities for local trades and services. The economic benefit will be massive and should not be ignored or traded away for tenuous and somewhat misguided objections that we've already heard before. As far as I can discern, this development ticks all the boxes. You, of course, should expect nothing less. In closing, and to ensure complete transparency, I want you to know that Pro 10 did not ask me to appear here today. I approached them of my own free will because I believe strongly that a $53 million development will have long-lasting and positive effects for our local community. And that is a good thing for all of us. I urge you to approve this application. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jane. Any questions of Jane? Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Jane, for giving us your time here today.
No worries.
And it's important to note that other people have got different views, and that's fine, but I thank you for yours. Jane, would it be, just to confirm, you were very concerned initially about this development?
Most definitely.
Yeah, and so now that you've had detailed conversations, you feel comfortable with that all your concerns have been addressed?
We certainly do. we had the opportunity offered to us, and we certainly took that opportunity to visit Lethbridge to see what the actual operation is about. Our initial main concern was smell. It seems to be, oh, you're having a chicken farm behind you. Oh, God, the smell. That seems to be the main perception. Indeed, noise, and that was two of the main things. And when we went there, the biosecurity was incredible. You had to suit up, you had to do everything. It wasn't just a case of, oh, yeah, have a look in here. Look, it's not a pleasant thing to see thousands of chickens, but the reality is if we want to eat, that's what's going to happen. It's like if you went to an abattoir, I guess. But when we went in there, the smell, yeah, there's a smell, but it's not an overpowering, and it's more of a grainy smell, I think, from the stuff they use on the floors. It certainly wasn't overpowering. When the door was shut on the sheds, we actually went through 2 sheds, and we found the noise, well, there was none once the shed was shut. And indeed, when we actually travelled around their facility at Lethbridge, obviously in their car, we stopped occasionally, and I would say, okay, how many metres are we from the sheds? Oh, we're 700 metres. You could smell absolutely nothing, and certainly could hear nothing. So that really allayed the main concerns I guess we had. Being, 1.4 kilometres away from us, I have no doubt whatsoever that just like the quarry, which we were given nightmares about 10 years ago and went down the path of thinking it was going to be the end of the world, this will be just another business over that way. And I think the economic benefit to the community, I think it's a no-brainer for me.
Okay, thank you, Jane. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Jane. Any other questions of Jane? Thanks, Jane. So, councillors, the officers have provided a recommendation with the report for our consideration. Does any councillor wish to move a motion in relation to this matter? Councillor Arnott, to be seconded. Councillor Potter. Is it to be opposed? Councillor Arnott, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor Wright. Obviously, I'd like to thank the presenters. Everyone had a conversation here with us today. It's important that we get your views. These things always need to be balanced. We must have industrial progress in the area. We must have development. That we keep looking for that. We talked about that before with the Tourist Information Centre to get business moving, keep the area active. So this is an example of that. We've had other examples that people have spoken to tonight. So we need to balance this to make sure we get it right with those people who also have concerns about it. And I think it's an appropriate process. We do get feedback sometimes. These processes are lengthy, but I think it's necessary that everyone can have their appropriate say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Potter?
No, thanks, Mayor.
Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Hart?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'd just like to thank everybody for making their submissions today, and would like to thank everyone who's here for their patience with us having to adjourn a meeting and go into another meeting shortly. So I appreciate you taking the time to make your submissions and to speak to us today. And the motion that we're dealing with today is simply to refer this matter to a future council or planning committee meeting for a decision.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Any other councillors? Councillors, I'll now call for a vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried 7-0. Thank you, councillors. Now moving into item 8.5, hearing of governance rule submissions. One person has requested to speak to their submission, and I invite Prabha Kati to address the committee. I would like to invite Prabha Kati to address the committee.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. I'm mindful of the 5-minute rule.
You've got 5 minutes, thank you.
Mentioned, and that actually does form part of my submission.
Thank you.
And I hope you'll give me just a little bit of leeway there. My submission focuses on the question time to council, as well as the submissions processes of other major parts. In relation to the question time, and I'm trying to come up with some examples to show you what I mean. The highly structured format of the question time, as it is designed, I feel is designed to manage and control the public and to ensure that the community members, it does not allow the community members to engage with councillors and for council staff, and does not permit them to make a statement or ask a follow-up questions without having to wait until the end of when the question is answered. I think, and the example that I'm going to give is in relation to the electric car charger. Some of you might recollect that there was a businessman who had put forward a submission to install electric chargers stations, and it took about 2 years for council to deal with it, or rather didn't deal with it, and the person withdrew. So the question at the meeting was, from a member of the public was, why did council take 2 years and still not decide on the matter? And the answer that was given was, yes, we are aware that a businessman has put forward a submission. They have now withdrawn, so the matter is now closed. The actual question, which was why did council take 2 years to deal with it, was not answered. And the issue of engagement with the community, I believe, is more a systemic one rather than any reflection on member of council. And I've met with councillors outside of this forum. They're all very friendly, very approachable, but the system is designed such that they don't speak. I acknowledge that Councillor Finnegan had on one occasion asked for the council staff member to elaborate on or answer the question in full. I feel that the format is designed for meetings in the early 20th century, where certainly the patriarchy was revered and ruled, and they saw fit to rule on behalf of the community. It is not one that is fit for purpose in the 21st century, where the community expects a greater say in matters that affect them and demand more transparency and accountability from council. I think we could make it more relevant by making the engagement between the community and council members more informal. I'm mindful of the Roberts rules and that you need to have the process going through the mayor, but as I also understand, the Roberts rules is ideal for legislative matters, but not for engagement with the community. Certainly for the rest of the meeting that can follow through, but not for the ones where we're engaging with the community. It needs to be more, in my view, one where the community member themselves can ask the question rather than the mayor having to do it for them. And the engagement is between the relevant person answering the question and the community member, and certainly more engagement from the councillors as well. The other aspect of it was that I mentioned whether a citizen's agenda can be included in the meetings. I feel that if council can't adhere to this or accommodate this, then perhaps what they do need to do is create another forum. Now, from what Alan Billing said just a little bit earlier, I believe that there is room and there is a need for another forum whereby the community can engage with council officers so that things are brought up in a very timely fashion and not in this highly structured way where there's a forum where there's a lot of engagement, there's to and fro, and you can communicate with each other. A couple of things that I'm, in relation to the actual submission process, this 5-minute rule to start with, I don't believe the 5-minute, and I'm struggling over here, the 5-minute rule does not accommodate where there are multiple issues being discussed and more complex, and you need a little time to explain. By no means am I saying that we're going to take 15 or 20 minutes, but a little over, the chair is always there to keep it under control. Otherwise, you need to ask, what is the purpose of the submission meeting if you're not even going to give us time to deliver our submissions? The other aspect, and I'm at a slight disadvantage over here in relation to the submissions, is the fact that I don't have the council staff members' response to my submission. I know that that used to be there, but I don't know why it's not there at the moment. I haven't seen it. And
We're way past five
Yeah.
minutes, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. So that demonstrates your point. So we'll have to wind it up.
From the point of due process, people need to be able to see what they are responding to. Yes, I mean, even if you look at in a courtroom, you provide your document, someone else responds to it, you should be able to at least respond to what their submission is. The final one, because I do need to give this example, Mayor, because it's not explained otherwise, is the one where at the end I've asked for the councillor may request that a councillor may request that multiple matters in one motion are separated where they are unrelated. Now, I do know that the rules now provide for the CEO to separate them in discussion with the councillor, but the example I'm giving is in relation to the sale of Bruce Street, where the sale and how the proceeds should be distributed were all both in one motion. There should have been a scope for a councillor to then step forward and say that this needs to be separated, and when there's a second, at least, that it's so be done.
I understand your point. Thank you. Any questions from councillors? Councillor Potter?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Mr. Culley, I'm just interested in another form of engagement that you're looking for in a more informal way, but where you can have meaningful discussions. And I'd just like to give you an example of Monday, for example, the CEO, some executive and some councillors were at BIAC to Community Hall and invited the community to come and talk about issues and interact. Is something like that, is that what you're looking for? Do you think that would work, or are you looking for something else?
Look, there's no harm in doing that, but I don't think that's the right format. Because the issues of the community does not dovetail nicely into what council wants to, discuss. There should be a forum similar to this one, regular, where it could be once a month, it could be once a quarter, where the people can come forward and bring what they expect, the issues that are of importance to them. I think why I say that this is not fit for purpose in the 21st century is we are forgetting that it's not the same as it was in the past. Nowadays we have the social media, and you will notice that the very fact that you have voices of Apollo Bay is an indicator that the engagement process that the council has now is not working. We need to move into the 21st century where people are expecting a greater say in matters that affect them and that affect their community. And the issue that Alan had brought up in relation to the visitor centre, and I'm not that, haven't followed that closely, but that is one that could have been brought up in a time matter, because that's exactly what he said. Why have we not been involved till now? We need to move.
Thanks. Any other questions? Councillor Arnott, did you have a question?
Thank you, Mayor White. Look, thank you for, I've been listening with interest what you've been saying, but I just wanted to pick up on Councillor Potter's question, if I may, and if I can get a short response, because time. We do have regular meetings of this nature where people can feed into, and to council meetings, but they feed into things which are on the agenda. Are you suggesting a meeting where we don't have items, that people can feed into items which are not on the agenda?
It can be both. You can ask for people to put forward what is it that they would like to discuss, so you are well informed, and I think that would probably make sense. Whether or not all the councillors are there is not something that I'm suggesting. It could be a variation of particular groups who are informed of a particular issue that need to speak.
Okay, thank you.
You, Councillor Hart.
Thank you for your submission today. But being mindful of the structures of governance rules and how it can be challenging to change them comprehensively in one step. Can I've picked up from you and I want to check whether would help. Would it help if you could, in asking a question, at least give some context to it if you wanted to? Because I've certainly been at meetings where mayors have said, well, you need to ask a question, not necessarily to you, but to people who've asked questions. And would it help being able to ask follow-up questions so you can really tease out that? Would that at least help in relation to the question time?
In the example that I gave about the charger, the person who asked the question just sat there because they didn't know, well, no one said, actually that question hasn't been answered. So, and they didn't know that they could come at the end and jump in and ask for it. It should be one continuous, my question is my question, I ask it, the answer is there, I'm here to say, you haven't answered my question in full. That's how it should operate. This is too structured, overly structured to allow that.
Follow-up question, Councillor
Yeah, I've got a
Hart.
couple of follow-ups. The particular change in the governance rules is simply asking for people state the topic of their question. It would still allow a person to ask, but the officers would know in advance, the CEO and Mayor would know at least what the topic is, you know, whether it's the budget or whether it's blue water. Do you see any particular problem with having to give notice on the day, just a basic notice that I want to ask questions to do with blue water fitness or the budget or whatever it might be?
So you're talking about council meetings?
Yes, yes. So you come into a council meeting and the proposal is you would have to write down and advise someone what the topic is so that when it's asked they at least have an idea as to where.
Yeah, yes, I think so.
And I've got another one if I can.
Yeah, follow up.
One part of your submission, which I don't think you had you didn't have time to speak to today, was on petitions, which I found really interesting.
Yeah.
Particularly, as I understand the point you're making, is that if a motion is being dealt with to deal with a petition, that the person who lodged the petition should have an opportunity to, I think, address the meeting. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So possibly to say whether or not they feel that addresses the issue. Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah, also, yes, if it addresses the issue, and if councillors tend to try and change the petition through their motions, that they should be able to stand up and say whether they agree to that. I'm putting forward a motion because I want you to vote on my motion. On my petition. If you want to change it, then it doesn't become the petition that I put forward to you. So then I should be able to say either I'd prefer that no vote be done on that, but I would like the vote to be on the petition that I asked for.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hart. Any other questions for Prabha? Councillor Finnegan.
Ready to move a motion when...
So there's no other questions? Okay, councillors, the officers have provided a recommendation with the report for our consideration. If the councillor wish to move a motion, Councillor Finnegan.
Yes, I'd like to move an alternative motion that adds a point 3 to note that the Minister for Local Government has today appointed a municipal monitor to oversee the Colac Otway Shire Council.
Can I have some advice on that, please?
Point of order,
Point
Mayor.
of order? Not related to this, thank you.
I'd make the argument that it's we're considering.
No, I think it's a
submissions
separate
on
issue
draft
and not
governance
related.
rules.
Mayor,
I'll uphold the point of order.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'm happy to move the officer recommendation in relation to the governance rules.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Arnott. Is it to be opposed? Not to be opposed. Councillor Hart.
Yeah, I do want to speak on this one, and I will, and I again thank everyone who's made submissions on this and all matters on the agenda today, and again apologise and thank people for their patience. It's getting late in the day for some people have waited quite a while. But this will come back to a council meeting as it says, but what I would like to see without prejudging where I'll go with all this, I'd like to see the issue addressed. Could question time have some sort of clause that allows at least some latitude for someone to give some context to what the question they're asking? Could question time have the chair at least inviting, when someone asks a question and gets an answer, did you have any follow-up specifically in relation to the answer you've got? I don't think they're big asks. I don't know that they won't fully address all the matters that have been raised, but I think they're improvements that we should have in a council report. How might that work? And the other thing that I found very interesting, I'd like to hear that council agenda addressing the issue when we're moving a response for a petition. Is there really harm in the person who organised the petition having up to 5 minutes, perhaps not to debate the motion, but to say at least, well, councillors, I think that recommendation, that motion does or does not really address my petition, and why? I can't see why those couple of points might be able to be accommodated in the governance rules, and they would be improvements. And if it is that someone says, well, I don't think your motion addresses a petition, the council of the day is still free to disregard that. But why shouldn't the person who's got a petition signed by 900 or 1,400 people have that opportunity? And they're some of the things I'll be looking for when this comes back about the feasibility of those points. Because these governance rules are meant to help us to get through the business of council, but we're here to represent the people. At the end of the day, we're here to represent the people. From what I'm hearing, I haven't been convinced yet, but I look at the agenda when it comes that there's any problem with someone stating the topic of their question. And I think we have to remember with these governance rules and these issues, we have a responsibility not only to the people who are here, but to the 20,000 plus people who are residents and ratepayers of the Shire and don't come each meeting just as well. We wouldn't be able to sit them all. So we have to remember that we're trying to balance in these different issues. So I look forward to seeing what comes back to us in July.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mayor White. And I would just echo Councillor Hart's comments and note that I have often quite literally deferred to him with his governance experience because of his 17 years experience on council, and it needs not be discounted, that value. Now, the governance rules are something we've been working on for a while, so it's actually good to see them come to an end. And I'm really, really glad someone's actually taken the time to read through them and give comment to quite a dry and boring topic. It's not quite as exciting as some of the other things we've been talking about today, so thank you for doing that. Much appreciated. Look, I think it's unfortunate that we've got to have this sort of thing in place, but it's a reality that if we want to build in capacity for everyone to have the capacity to have a free say, to everyone have the opportunity to say what's on their mind without being overridden by the loudest voice. We shouldn't be overrun by that loudest person or that person who just wants to bulldoze their opinion through. We need a structure around it so everyone can have a fair say. That's what this is designed to do. That's what what we've been talking about today is designed to deliver. If we haven't got it quite right, we'll work on it. No doubt about that from my perspective, and certainly I'm with Councillor Hart in respect to whatever we need to do to get the right outcome so that we can have a partnership with the people, because we're here to represent the community, not to look after our own interests. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Arnott. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to say thank you to Mr Cuddy for making his submission today, for his ongoing interest. I've always had interesting discussions on governance matters with Mr Cuddy. It is a fairly dry topic, and I do appreciate your input and value your input, and I hope all councillors take into consideration what you've talked about today when we come to adopt our governance rules. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Costin. Any other councillors? Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And like other councillors, I'll echo their comments. Thank you, Mr Cuddy, for speaking to your submission today. You know, you are someone who is well across, I guess, the council's governance rules, and you have a reputation for such. So I think hearing from a member of the community such as yourself is very important to us on this matter. And I'd like to extend that to all people who've made submissions on this matter and submissions tonight as well. It should be noted that Jason Schramm made a submission as well, and appears to have been some confusion or something about an invite or the like to speak to the matter. However, I think his submission also takes into account
Thank you, Councillor Finnegan. Any other councillor wish to speak?
Sorry, point of order, Mayor. I'm just confused about what happened with Mr. Schramm, and this is the first I've heard that there's been some confusion about that he was coming or wasn't allowed to come or whatever.
Well, as has been reported in the Colac Herald, there was some mix-up with Mr. Schramm's submission ending up on the public agenda, but he has sent me a text message stating as he wasn't told about the date, time, or asked if he would attend. Now, I can't speak to whether or not that was the case or there's been something missed in translation, but I thought it would be good to speak to his submission regardless.
Thanks, Councillor Finnegan. Anybody else wish to speak? Councillors, I'll now call for a vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried 7-0. Thank you, councillors. That concludes this submission meeting, and I want to echo my fellow councillors when they said thank you to everybody for coming today. It's been a long submissions committee hearing, longest I've ever been at, and I appreciate everybody's contributions. Thank you. So that will conclude